Hello, my name is Bryce, and this is my channel, Striving Intellect. And today we're going to be talking about reciprocal tariffs and how to deal with them and how not to deal with them. And right here we have a picture of Japan's Senkaku Islands. And this actually connects to something I'm going to go over a little bit later. But this is actually a part of the Japanese archipelago that is claimed by China. It's Japanese territory that China wants. And generally speaking, in the past, when China wants an island chain, usually they just kind of take it. So I have this article by Reuters, and it is China, Japan, and South Korea will jointly respond to U.S. tariffs, China's state media says. And a general rule is anything that Chinese state media says is basically Chinese Communist Party propaganda. All of the state-run medias are run by the Chinese Communist Party, and they basically only say things that'll further the interest of the Chinese Communist Party. So that being said, I'll go on and I'll read this. Beijing on March 31st, China, Japan, and South Korea agreed to jointly respond to U.S. tariffs. A social media account affiliated with Chinese state media said on Monday. An assertion of Seoul called somewhat exaggerated, while Tokyo said there was no such discussion. I mean, already it's a social media post from somebody affiliated to a state-run media. And generally speaking, I would go as far as to say that any state-run media is going to be propaganda. There's generally not going to be any ifs, ands, or buts about it. Most, if not all, state-run media is going to be propaganda to further the apparatus of the state that runs it, obviously. So I would take this with a grain of salt, but that being said, if this is true, this is obviously not the way to deal with tariffs, especially reciprocal tariffs, even protective tariffs that are trying to protect specific industries. This would not necessarily be the most logical or rational way to deal with it. China has stated that they want the Senkaku Islands, for example, which is Japan's territory. They're also funding North Korea, who has stated that their goal is either to take over South Korea or completely destroy it. They are heavily funded by China, like almost exclusively, by the way. So, generally speaking, if you're going to respond to tariffs that your ally is putting on you and your largest military backer, maybe don't team up with the people who want to take over your territories. Generally speaking, probably not the smartest thing to do to empower your enemies. I'm just saying that right now, probably not the smartest thing to do. But again, it's not to say that they are doing this. They may not necessarily be working together with China, and China might just be miming the different tariffs that Japan and South Korea use in response. I'm not saying that this is 100%. I would actually take it very lightly. But again, this is the Senkaku Islands. What generally happens with the Chinese Communist Party in any of the seas, whether it's the Sea of Japan, the South China Sea, the ocean near, or the sea near the Philippines, is they'll do a strategy called salami slicing or onion slicing. Where they will basically cut small pieces of individual countries' territories a little bit at a time so that those countries do not argue or complain about it, and then they'll build military bases or artificial islands on said territory. Think the Scarborough Shoals near the Philippines. Obviously, China has built a large amount of artificial let me see if I can look at this. So this is actually some of the images of these artificial islands. So generally speaking, I would assume if China wants part of your archipelago, the Shinkaku Islands, then they would probably want to do something like this, where they salami slice off bits and then they build artificial islands so that they can build military bases and or runways. It looks like, frankly, like it looks like they're building Air Force bases and military bases, which again is not in Japan's or South Korea's interests at all. So hopefully this isn't the way that they're dealing with these tariffs. So I'm going to go over some of the different ways that other individuals are dealing with these tariffs. And, you know, like there's a couple different functions of tariffs. Generally speaking, you can have reciprocal tariffs. If a country has tariffs on you, then therefore you would put tariffs on said country. You can have protectionist tariffs that are protecting your industries in your country. Strategic industries such as steel, microchips, anything that you produce military equipment with, boats, automobiles, airplanes. These are industries that you might protect with protectionist tariffs. There's a couple other uses of tariffs. You can use them as a way to either negotiate to companies that come and build their equipment or product in your own country. You can use it to force companies to move their productions back to your country if they've moved out. So there's a couple different ways of using it, whether you're using them as a leverage to have people buy American products. If you buy a product that's produced in your country, it's not going to have a tariff on it, by the way. So there's a couple different uses for them, but we'll go ahead and we'll go over this article real quick. And this is actually probably a logical and rational response to dealing with reciprocal tariffs. This is on Ground News. India eyes tariff cuts on $23 billion of U.S. imports to shield its $66 billion of exports. So right away, that shows that we have a trade deficit of $43 billion, which again, like this would be one of the uses of tariffs. Usually you don't necessarily want a trade deficit. Most of the time, you don't want a trade deficit, but I'll go on. India is considering cutting tariffs on over $23 billion of U.S. imports to prevent tariff exposed by Donald Trump, which will begin on April 2nd. The proposed tariff reduction could be the largest in years for India, which aims to protect $66 billion in exports from U.S. tariffs. Tariffs on certain products, including meat and dairy, will not be lowered, while cuts on automotive tariffs are under discussion. I mean, again, this is probably a more logical way of doing it. If you have tariffs on the United States, then maybe don't have those, and maybe the United States won't put tariffs on you. It seems pretty logical to me. Here, again, is another example of probably how to properly and rationally deal with reciprocal trade tariffs. Smotrich moves to cancel tariffs on U.S. goods in goodwill gesture to Trump. Collection of customs from imports from the United States amounts to approximately 42 million shekels. That's a real currency, I swear. Or $11 million per year. Smotrich asked the Economy and Agriculture Minister to hasten the process. generally speaking, I would say most likely a better way to deal with an ally that's putting tariffs on you, as opposed to, I don't know, our neighbors up north in Canada whose leaders propose cutting off our energy as retribution for tariffs. Again, probably not the best way to deal with your ally. Just like Japan and South Korea, your largest military backer, the people who protect your trade, your largest trade partner, like, these are all things that the United States, it's a category the United States falls under for basically all of these countries. So again, like, maybe approach, trade tariffs in a logical and rational way, which, again, I'm not saying that Japan and South Korea are teaming up with China. Like, that's probably propaganda, by the way. I would take it very lightly. But again, like, there's probably an appropriate way to deal with reciprocal tariffs without starting a trade war or cutting off, the country's electricity, which is also what countries do in war, or siding with your actual enemy and empowering your enemy, which, again, China has basically stated that Japan and South Korea are their enemies. They're funding North Korea, and they want Japanese islands for their own. So I just thought I would talk about this. I thought it was an interesting subject. I hope you guys think it's interesting as well. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.